Every 15 years, God releases millions of monsters to reduce the population, and although humanity has attempted to fight them, the monsters are too powerful, forcing people to simply hide. The film commences by describing the supposed initial Judgment Day, which is followed by an emergence of hordes of monsters from ordinary minds, responsible for the killing of millions of people and the destruction of entire cities. Consequently, a real war was initiated with these monsters, culminating in their extermination. Protective gates were constructed on the location of the previous wells, meant to safeguard against future invasions. After 15 years, the world had partially recovered from the ordeal. Laura is one of the fortunate survivors, and she currently works at a school. She has a persistent but unsuccessful male friend named Milton, whom she frequently turns down for dates. The probable reason for her rejection is resentment towards her ex-husband, Dave, who was absent during the Day of Judgment, forcing Laura, who was pregnant at the time, to fend for herself. Dave and Laura have a 15-year-old son named Tyler, who spends most of his day at the skatepark with his friends, including his girlfriend, Maddie, and engages in computer games during his free time. Tyler serves as a pawn in his parents' challenging relationship since they separated shortly after his birth. In the meantime, the situation is growing increasingly tense. The approach of an eclipse is considered a potential precursor to a monster invasion. Concurrently, seismic activity has risen, leading to Protective Dome staff conducting urgent inspections. Additionally, the news is quite disconcerting, with reports indicating mass fish extinction across the globe. The resemblance to the events preceding the first Judgment Day is strikingly familiar, including migration patterns, hinting at a possible repetition of events from 15 years ago. While spending the weekend with his dad, Tyler receives a phone call. Dave answers and discovers that it's his old friend, Ted, who claims that the new Judgment Day will occur the following day. Ted insists that Dave bring his family and seek refuge in his shelter before the eclipse. In the meantime, the first monster manages to sneak up the stairs unnoticed and infiltrate the Protective Dome. As this is happening, Laura phones Dave, having also seen the news, and demands that he bring Tyler home. She's convinced that the only chance of survival is to retreat to the shelter that Milton has already secured. Dave assures Laura that Tyler is safe with him since he is his father. However, Tyler receives a message and leaves without telling anyone while his father is on the phone with Laura. Worried, Laura insists that Dave bring Tyler to her immediately since his house is not secure. Dave agrees and goes to Tyler's room, only to find him missing. Meanwhile, Milton rushes Laura to the shelter since it is filling up quickly, but she cannot find Tyler. Milton uses Tyler's phone number to locate him at the skate park. Maddie and Tyler are together at the skate park, where Maddie is feeling anxious due to her parents leaving her alone. She pleads with Tyler to stay with her, and he promises to never abandon her like his father did to his mother. Suddenly, a bird cry is heard, and flocks of birds fly in one direction, causing panic among the people in the park who begin to run. As everyone flees the town, Dave tries to find Tyler at the park but gets caught in a massive traffic jam. He eventually abandons his car and continues his search on foot. While this is happening, a worker under the dome is checking the instruments when strange sounds and rustling catch their attention. Suddenly, a monster appears and attacks the worker, tearing them apart. Soldiers try to shoot at the monster, but their bullets are ineffective. Tyler and Maddie witness the chaos and panic around them. Just then, Dave arrives and Tyler explains that Maddie had nowhere else to go and he couldn't leave her. Milton and Laura arrive with Tyler and Maddie, but when they reach the shelter, they find that it's already full and only women and children are being allowed in. With just over an hour until the eclipse, chaos reigns in the city as people try to flee and traffic jams abound. Dave tells Tyler to take care of his mother and sends them towards the shelter, while he and Milton stay behind with the rest of the crowd. In the midst of chaos, Tyler heads to the shelter but then quickly runs to his father. Laura and Maddie follow in a rush. Tyler insists that he will not leave his father behind. As they arrive, the scoreboard displays the message that the shelter is at full capacity. Quickly thinking, they race to the car. Dave proposes going to Ted's hideout in the desert, while Milton suggests going to the nearby school, which has a basement for shelter. The road is blocked by a long line of cars. An earthquake starts and the solar disk gets covered by a shadow as they get out of the car. The eclipse has begun. The monsters make their way out under the Protective Dome and start to capture the city. Crawling and flying, they appear in crowds. Dave suggests leaving the city because it's too dangerous. However, he wants to drive himself, which makes Milton angry. He claims that it is his car and he knows how to save everyone. Dave and Milton have a fight. Suddenly, a flying monster grabs Milton and carries him into the sky. Laura screams in agony while Dave hurries to put her in the car to escape. As they drive along the canal, Dave tries to reassure the children that they will be fine and will make it out. However, the car begins to run out of gas, so Dave decides to find another car to replace it. Ahead of them, they see several cars and Dave gets into one of them. However, to his surprise, he finds an elderly man hiding in the back seat. Suddenly, they see a huge bloody monster that looks like the skeleton of a bull. It passes by their car without noticing them and starts chewing on a dead body lying nearby. Dave rolls the car back to Laura and the kids quietly. They are now parked next to the new car they need, but the bull has noticed them. Suddenly, an elderly man gets out of the car and sprinkles the bull with salt from a jar in his hand. The bull stops, allowing Laura and the kids to run into Dave's car. The man is then attacked and torn apart by the bull, but Dave is able to drive away. They drive up to Ted's hideout, a concrete bunker that appears solid and secure with cameras on the roof. However, no one answers when they knock on the door. Meanwhile, hordes of monsters converge on the city from all sides, running in a herd along the mountain. As they wait, Ted is seen on a monitor with a gun pressed against his neck by an unknown person standing behind him. Rushing, they head straight to the shelter. Dave takes a tire iron to protect the family, but the bunker's doors open just in time and they run inside. Dave happily embraces Ted, and Stella, Ted's wife, is already in the bunker. A military man, Corporal Garrett Jensen, is sitting in the corner. Ted introduces him as his acquaintance. Monitors show the monsters trying to break down the door. Everyone is tense, and Garrett remains quiet. Maddie asks how the monsters sense them, whether they can see through walls. Garrett responds with a smirk, saying they react to light, heat, but he thinks they see their souls. He describes them as the offspring of the devil and suggests they torment the flesh, but feed on the soul. Laura asks if he is religious. Garrett replies, "Today, yes." He shares his experience of working at a refinery during the first Judgment Day. When the monsters broke in, he dove into a pond of salty mud, where they were afraid to approach. He then sat in the dirt and listened as the monsters destroyed 150 of his colleagues and friends. Garrett is deeply involved in his story and doesn't notice Ted signaling Dave to grab the knife. Dave understands and quietly takes it. Garrett says that this is why it's called Judgment Day, the devil rules on this day. Meanwhile, a creature resembling a centipede crawls from the street and into a small hole in the mesh covering the window. Garrett volunteers to take the first watch, and Ted invites everyone to stay. He looks meaningfully at Dave. Garrett pulls out his gun, which makes Dave put down the knife. He explains that he found this hideout while trying to hide. Although Ted was against it, kind Stella let him in. Garrett managed to survive the first time and will survive now at any cost. Tyler tries to take the gun from him, but Garrett throws him away. Dave comforts the corporal. Suddenly, a centipede-like monster rushes out of the wall towards Stella. Ted rips it off her neck and pours salt on it. Dave takes the gun from Garrett and shoots the monster. As they manage to fend off the other monsters, they tend to Stella's wounds and tie up Garrett. Suddenly, a huge bull arrives, coming to the monster's aid. Dave realizes they must escape the bunker. The bull is trying to break down the doors. Ted is hesitant to leave, fearing for his wife's survival outside, but Stella insists they go. She reveals an underground passage that leads to the mountains. Garrett convinces Ted to take him along, as he has a car with a full tank that can take them to the gate, where they'll find other bunkers. He says the monsters came from there and won't come back. Despite their initial disbelief, they eventually agree to take Garrett's offer for help, as he insists he was only trying to survive and that it is now beneficial for him to help them. Dave reassures Garrett that they will forget about everything if he gets them to their destination. They equip themselves with weapons, courtesy of Ted's arsenal. The bull continues to relentlessly break down the doors, but they successfully flee through the tunnel. Stella falls ill as they make their way to the car. Dave and Laura start to argue, with Laura blaming Dave for their current situation, saying they could have stayed in the shelter. Tyler then spots a dead monster on the side of the road. As Maddie approaches it, long tentacles emerge from a hole in the ground and wrap around her legs, attempting to pull her in. Maddie screams and Tyler and Dave save her. Garrett offers his assistance and Dave cuts the ropes binding his hands. They climb to the top of the mountain and observe a city in ruins and on fire. The group descends to the car, but it doesn't start. Monsters start appearing on the mountaintop and charge towards them. Garrett attempts to start the engine, while Stella surveys the swarm of monsters and then glances at the gun in her husband's hands. She takes out her gun, exits the car, and Ted pleads with her to hand over the weapon. But Stella turns away from him and heads towards the monsters, knowing that she's doomed. Ted calls out to her, crying, but Dave forces him into the car. At the last second, they manage to escape, with crowds of monsters pursuing them. As they were driving, they caught a radio signal reporting that nearly all shelters had been destroyed by the monsters. Laura comforts Dave by placing her hand on his shoulder. Upon arriving at the gate, they find it open and empty. Garrett reveals that the hideout is in the basement, but they need to restore power first. Dave and Garrett volunteer to fix the power, while the rest of the group heads to the first aid post to treat Ted's back wound. They restore electricity, and Garrett explains that the gate was prepared for a second invasion by pumping tons of salt into it, but it was too deep. They reunite with the others, but then they hear the roar of monsters and find a bloody corpse. With only 2 hours left until the end of the eclipse, Garrett suggests hiding in a chemical warehouse with impenetrable doors. Suddenly, a monster attacks Garrett, but with Dave's help, they manage to defeat it. However, the noise attracts more monsters, so Garrett runs through a door and injects himself with something, causing his veins to swell and turn black. Dave requests Tyler to protect his mother during his absence. He plans to neutralize the threat by diverting salt water through the pipes to repel the monsters. Laura kisses him and reminds him to be careful. Dave sneaks through the ventilation and witnesses a monster devouring its prey. He must close the taps next to the monster to collect the water in containers. Dave succeeds in opening the faucet, but the monster detects him and chases after him as he climbs back up. Tyler shoots at the monsters while the rest of the group is surrounded. In the midst of the chaos, Dave's voice echoes through the loudspeaker, instructing them to activate the fire alarm. As the monsters close in, Ted hands Tyler an axe and charges towards the creatures, telling Tyler to protect the family. Ted is attacked by multiple monsters, prompting Tyler to fire back. Ted tries to defend himself, but his injuries are too severe. Tyler runs out of ammunition, so he activates the fire alarm, causing streams of salt water to spray from all directions. The monsters are hit by the jets of salt water and dissolve into bloody dust, screaming in agony. The group is saved, but Ted does not survive. The eclipse comes to an end. The monsters return through the gate. Laura and the children flee to an area where they are confronted by Garrett, who points a gun at them. Garrett shoots Tyler, stating that it is not their world anymore and that God is taking a day off. Laura tries to shield her son, but Dave arrives and hits Garrett in the head with a fire extinguisher. Garrett collapses, and Dave rushes to Tyler and Laura's side. Suddenly, a massive monster emerges from beneath them, devouring Garrett whole. The group takes refuge in the medical unit, where they mix together a concoction of salt. As the monster approaches, it smashes through the doors, but Dave tosses a canister of the mixture at it. The explosion causes the monster to screech and crumble into ash. Laura embraces Dave, both couples in disbelief that they have been saved. They step outside to a ravaged world, but the monsters are nowhere to be seen. Perhaps this is just another respite, but it is clear that life will be reborn, and light will always prevail over darkness. Hope you enjoyed, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for more movie recaps.